Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Shift, an online educational program consisting of 7 master teachers. Here with our first tier, we are going to talk about this moment in time and history while we all face the COVID virus and the quarantine and a lot of isolation. First and foremost, we want to acknowledge all those dealing with illness and sickness. Our prayers and our thoughts go out to them, and certainly anybody who has lost a life or dealing with losing somebody due to the virus, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Our goal here on the Shift is to help you process this moment in time by giving you an idea and an experience through the lives of 7 master teachers. Today here, we are here with Susan Pracht, and we are here with her in an effort to allow her to tell her story, but also to give you some insight as to how a master teacher is responding to this moment in time. So Susan, welcome. Welcome to Shift. Thank you so much for being a part of this special group. And in an effort to kick us off today, I just want to ask you about how are you moving through this moment in time, and what has this been like for you and for your family? Why don't we just kind of start there?
I think we're moving through it as gracefully as we can, right? I mean, I think it's been scary and upsetting, and you know, when you have kids and their routine and their world is upended, the question sort of becomes, what is that replaced with, right? And there's some sense of structure and format in terms of, you know, trying to give them education at home. But, you know, it's been an opportunity, I think, in a lot of ways for us to understand what it means to really be together, right? And to come together in the sense that we're, you know, isolating, right? To try to keep other people safe and to keep ourselves safe, but to sort of slog through the days and the weeks, right? And what's coming on to months. Without the typical breaks that we usually get, right? And to understand how the dynamic of our family has changed when we operate more as a unit, right? Together just all the time. And it's given me the opportunity to get to know my kids in ways that I probably wouldn't have otherwise.
Awesome. What is like a normal day look like for you guys right now?
We're still getting up on time-ish, right? Like my kids are little, so we still have sort of the day rolling out as normal. And then it looks like us attempting to online school and giving up about 20 minutes in, right? And then we get outside as much as we can because I think that's the healthiest thing for all of us. And, you know, we're grateful for our dog who we drag around the neighborhood because it gives us something to do. And then we've been like baking, right? And doing art and just doing all the little things at home that I always wanted to do with them, but we never had the time, right? Because it's like we're running here, practice, school, whatever. So we're doing that stuff, right? And sometimes it's shitty. And I'm like, I know why we didn't bake bread for the past 10 years because it really sucks to bake bread with kids. But sometimes, you know, it's better than I thought it would be, you know? So there's difficult times and then there's surprising times, right? That happen in the course of an hour, I would say, day by day.
In light of that, what's good? And you've talked a little bit about that. You know, what's the silver lining in all this for you and your family?
You know, in some ways I'm such an introvert, so it's my habit to want to be home, you know? So I think in a lot of ways that part of my personality has made me uniquely suited to not struggle against this, right? As much as I would if I was someone who behaved differently. But I think we've gotten closer, and I think that we've gotten more accepting of each other's eccentricities because we know there is no relief, right? Like I can't just say like, I'm going to deal with this with you because tomorrow you're going to be at school for 6 hours and I won't have to deal with it anymore, right? It's like that thing will persist indefinitely. So it's made me a more attuned mom, I think, in a lot of ways, right? To what they actually need from me, what the behavior actually means. And it's made me less patient on the flip side, right? Because I don't anticipate the break coming. So it makes me less patient. You know, it's just, it's a work in progress, I
Mm-hmm.
think, for them and for me, right? Like just trying to figure out what this constant togetherness means.
Mm-hmm. What has been for you as a mom, as a wife? What has been most challenging for you?
I think the hardest part is the feeling that I need to keep everybody happy and okay, right? It's like the burden of sort of creating the vibe in the house and making sure everyone's fed and making sure everyone's busy. And it's been a process of letting my kids get bored, right? And maybe having it be okay if everyone doesn't get their favorite lunch at the exact same time every day,
Mm-hmm.
right? And understanding that in these moments of everything not being perfect, that we're all learning to be resilient, right? I'm teaching them a more important lesson than this false idea that you're always going to get everything you need,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So the process of them going through it and learning to adapt and learning to do something as simple as entertain themselves, right, has made me proud of them and proud of me, because I've not held on to this idea that I can fix this, right? Because there's no fixing this one.
Hmm. I love during this moment in time when my kids say I'm bored. I just love it, and I'm like, good, go figure out something to do. Throw a rock, draw something, create something. But what an awesome opportunity! You remind me. I was able to take a class with you on Sunday, and Susan is a master yoga teacher, and I'm incredibly blessed to be one of her students. And in the beginning of class on Sunday, when you were speaking to us before class started, or at least the moving part of class, in your Dharma talk, in your storytelling, you spoke about this idea that sometimes it's okay not to be okay. And as a student, sitting here in my home doing yoga, like it was almost like I felt so relieved,
Mm.
because I think as humans we want to be okay all the time, and that's not possible. Can we talk a little bit about that and what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it speaks to, right, is commonality, because it's the idea that you're not okay. And also, I am not okay, right? And collectively, that's okay. I think when you hear someone's perspective and hear them speak to the fact that this particular time, right, is a time of such discord and such unpredictability, right? To pretend that every moment is an opportunity, or to pretend that you're grateful for this pause and not deal with the flip side of it, which is that it's scary and it's unpredictable and it's indefinite, right? And all of those things, no matter how much you can appreciate the good things about what is going on now, are hard things,
Hmm.
right? And the only way to sort of move past the fear and move past the pain and move past the terror is to acknowledge it and say it out loud, right? If you're pressing it down and you're trying to sort of whitewash what's going on, there's no room to move past the fear and the horror and the unsettling, right, that has happened to all of us collectively during this time. So the acknowledgement of the reality, right, is the first step to figuring out what happens now.
So I hear what you're saying is, a lot of times people, and myself included, we want to move through the pain quickly and get to the other side of it. But I hear what you're saying now is it's okay to kind of sit in the pain and allow the pain to kind of move through you so that we can get to the other side, but also maybe learn from it and experience it as it is in that moment.
And acknowledge your own humanity,
Yeah.
right? And acknowledge your own experience and your own feelings,
Hmm.
and not rush to make it okay, right?
Hmm.
For you or for anyone else.
I had an experience with my son about 2, 3 years ago. I was coming home from a retreat, and our fish had died. And I'm really good with dogs, and I'm fucking terrible at taking care of fish. And I came home, and my oldest, JD, was really quiet. And it took him a couple hours until we kind of moved downstairs. And he finally told me about the fish. And we cried together. And afterwards, he was just so relieved. And I try to go back to that story with him because it was a fish, and not to take away from the meaning of a fish, but I say to him, like, buddy, in that moment, that you held on, it was really hard. But as soon as you started to talk about and acknowledge what you felt, we were able to kind of take it off of your shoulders and put it out there, move through it, and get to the other side. And the other side was, for him that day, was like, hey, let's play Madden or let's have a catch. And it was such, for me, such an example of kind of what you're talking about. We need to acknowledge that at times, many times, our humanness is incredibly vulnerable and frail, and it's important for us to acknowledge that it's okay not to be okay. Which for me and for your students and for my son and for everyone, I think is just such an important lesson, especially in this moment in time, allowing us the opportunity to move through that pain or those fears and kind of get to the other side. You also mentioned in there this collective pause, and a lot of yoga, in my experience, is creating space, right, in between poses for a transition, and these movements are emblematic of kind of what we experience in life. And I'm wondering out loud right now, what do you think as a teacher, what this moment in time has created space for both us, individually, but also kind of collectively as a world? Maybe we'll just start off individually first.
I mean, I think the culture that has sort of come about as a result of the pause and the pieces of life that used to be so common that have been taken away, right, momentarily because of what's happening, has created this idea that you can do things on your own, right? And that may be something as simple as like giving your kids a haircut, right? Or maybe it's your yoga practice, right? Which has shifted to home, right? There's this idea that people are being forced to give themselves permission to take ownership of parts of their self-care, right? Maybe that's physical, maybe that's mental. Maybe it's an exterior thing, maybe it's an interior thing. But I think the aggregate result of the collective pause is a group of people who are becoming very adept at understanding how to exist within this in the environment, right? Knowing that it will change, knowing that it will shift, knowing that we will go back to some kind of normal. But during this particular, right, just tight little piece of time, what I've seen even in my own family has been really inspiring, right? That we're just sort of forced because we have no choice to figure shit out. Mm-hmm. And it makes me proud, of all of us and the ingenuity and the hope that goes along with that process. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of activity within the pause, and I think that's what I'm speaking to, right? Like the world is on pause, the country is on pause, but in the middle of this nothingness, there's these bursts of activity and ingenuity, right? And this idea that, you are now all of a sudden responsible for all this shit you used to farm out, right? You have to do it now. And what does that look like? And it's just been interesting to witness that and to be one of those doers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned also self-care in there, and I think that's just such an important topic, the relationship you have with yourself. How have you been able to kind of take care of yourself during this moment in time?
I'm very careful, right, with myself and with my yoga practice and with the time that I take to be alone every single day. Like I can get my hour in the morning, and sometimes I have to take it. Most of the time it's offered to me by my husband, but I protect it with everything I have, right? That is a time when I am on pause. And maybe that looks like yoga. Maybe that looks like meditating. Maybe that looks like swinging kettlebells, right? But there's a period of time during the day that I need to check out and make sure that I'm okay. And the time that I spend away from all the things I have to do makes me better prepared to go and do all those things, Mm-hmm. And beyond that, it's like all of the things that you would think about already. I'm trying to make very sure that we rest and that we disconnect from all this shit so that the end of every day is not sort of fueled by the cycle, right? Mm-hmm. Of what might happen or what didn't happen or what could happen. Mm-hmm. It's important that the idea of being on pause also applies, right, to you personally. and you should put a pause on the pieces of this that are making you fucking nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's like the constant refresh of the phone, or if it's the constant reading of the news, right, or the constant sort of theories that are springing up, right, among the group of people you surround yourself with, too much is no good, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't ignore it completely because it's not healthy, right? It's not responsible to not be aware of what's going on. But the idea of self-care, I think, extends beyond a physical practice.
Definitely.
I think it lends itself to setting boundaries, right, for yourself, with the people in your life, and with yourself, right? And knowing when the behavior you're engaging in is not serving you. It's important now.
I love that you bring up boundaries. It's something I struggle with. You know, I want to be like a yes man and say yes to everyone. And I forget where I read this, but I think it's pretty common knowledge. You know, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to kind of something else. And I think it's so important that we always consider that relationship with ourselves and how we're taking care of ourselves. How are you staying connected during this moment in time?
I'm reaching out more on the actual phone. Like, I want to hear people's voice. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
just texting as much. And I'm checking in with people who I know are by themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who are doing this sort of on their own. I'm paying more attention to them and spending more time making sure they know they're not by themselves, you know, and we talked that I taught on Sunday, and it was like so good to connect with people in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, also, not to sort of backtrack, but that's also an important part of self-care, right? Because the best way that you can feel good about yourself a lot of times is to look after someone else. And the way that you do that now may be different, right? It may not be the same as it always had been, but that doesn't mean that that too can't evolve,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because now is the time to show up,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the people who need you, and for the people who may not even know that they need you,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, now is the time.
Awesome, awesome. So, Susan, as I look at this moment in time, one of the ways in which I'm looking at it is through the hero's journey in literature and movies, and it's really applicable to all our lives, especially this moment in time where we go from the known world into the unknown, and we're in that space now. Where we're experiencing a lot of trials, a lot of tribulations, a lot of successes, a lot of failures. But also at the bottom of that journey is a death and a rebirth before returning to the normal world. I want to ask you, you and I are parents, and we work, and we have relationships, and our schedules can be rather chaotic. And I find myself prior to this period in time going from, work to practice to dinner, and bedtime and bath, and then crashing on the couch myself and waking up the next day and it being Groundhog Day all over again. How do we avoid repeating what we've just done? How do we take this moment in time and the space that we've been able to create and the connections? How do we bring that back into the real world or normalcy when we can start kind of leaving our homes and getting together?
I mean, I think, you know, in some ways, the reentry will be slow, right? It will be forced to be slow just for safety and all of that stuff. And that's sort of a good speed bump, right? To get us from here to where we were before here. But I think it goes back to what we just spoke to, which is the idea of setting the boundaries, right? So many of those things that create such stress and discord and lack of time and lack of patience are choices, right? Like, we choose, especially when we have little kids, right? Like, my kids are little. I'm deciding that that's okay for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if the collective result of those decisions is chaos and panic and paranoia, we need to change those decisions. And if my kids are happier now doing nothing, right? Even though that may be not as happy for me, right? That's a lesson for me to learn. It's a lesson to learn that there might be value in boredom, right? And there might be grace inside the space that this time has given us. And one would hope that those are the boundaries that you continue to set, even as more things return and become available. You know, that this time that you've moved through, the hero's journey, as you call it, puts yourself in a position where you're being very selective and very intelligent about what you let back in.
Very deliberate
That's
is
right.
kind of what I'm hearing you say. And so I'm also hearing you say, which it's interesting because it sounds very reasonable and rational, but it's very hard to do. Like, if you don't like the consequences or the results of any given day, you have to kind of backtrack and acknowledge that you're a part of that equation. And some of the choices you're making are resulting in those consequences. And I hear what you're saying now is like, we need to be really conscious of the decisions we're making, um, coupled with an awareness that those decisions are really at the bedrock and foundation of our experience. Um, and so when we return to the normal world, or there's that slow reentry, and somebody from our audience, which is inevitable, it could be me, gets caught back up in the chaos. What would you share with them? What would you advise to them? Let's say that person is me, and I'm a month back in to, connecting physically with other people and being out there, and all of a sudden I'm back in this routine, and I bump into you at the yoga studio, and I'm like, I don't know, I lost this moment in time. Like, I had it in this moment in time, the self-care, the connection, those moments with my children, and now we're back into this hamster wheel. Like, and what am I chasing? What do you say to me in the studio when I'm like looking for help or a shift? Or
When that happens to me, right, when something like that happens to me, I find the best approach is to get very granular, right? Because it's not the big idea of I'm too busy, right, that helps someone settle down and become unbusy. There's a thing, right? Like, among all of the things that are contributing to the way you may feel when you're in that state, there is one thing that's probably pushing you over the edge, and there's one thing that can go. And those two things may not be the same thing, right? Like, they may be different. But I would be so incredibly specific and task oriented in terms of really figuring out and being incredibly selective about what continues to matter to you after this is over, right? Because the rush and the race to sort of get back to the reentry is so understandable, because this time has been so hard, right? Like, physically and economically and emotionally for so many people. But it's an important question, right, of what's on the other side, and how can you take the good bits of this time and take them with you. And I think the overall lesson would be to do less, right? And the more piling on and the anxiety rising or the busyness rising or the lack of time rising, looking at that very specifically will tell you what needs to go, right? You don't need to go back into full quarantine, but you need like a sliver of quarantine,
mm-hmm.
right? Something's got to stop. Something's got to pause.
Mm-hmm. And from what you said earlier, as we make this slow reentry, it's still important to you, I would assume, as a teacher and as a student of this life, to continue to create that space for yourself on a daily basis where you can kind of tap into your own personhood and almost recharge, reset, whether it's yoga or meditation or kettlebells. I'm assuming that process is likely something that was going on before this, but something that will also continue long after this.
It's really necessary, because I think, especially as a parent, you cannot hear yourself for so much of the day, right? Like, it's really
Totally.
impossible to hear your own voice speaking to you, right? Like, you hear yourself speaking to your kids, and you hear your kids speaking to you and to each other and speaking all the time. But there's a value in having a conversation with yourself and asking a question and answering it. So that time that I've always taken, right, and take now and will continue to take as long as I'm here, right, remains ever important and ever precious. And that time might be the thing that prevents you from going into the loop,
Mm.
right? Because you may get the answer in that time to what you need to back off of before you even get to that state, right? It's like you're constantly filling up the well, right,
Mm-hmm.
of time to hear yourself and to take care of yourself and to be present to yourself. And sometimes you have to steal that time, right? Like, sometimes you have to draw a real line in the sand and say, I'm choosing to do this, so I can't do that. It's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Absolutely.
You are as worthy of your own self-respect as anyone else.
Most definitely. And so that process of self-care will continue for you.
Absolutely.
Um, is there, and we're coming to the end of this tier and this interview. When I go to my space, my yoga mat, I cultivate over and over again a vision by which I want to live, so that when I leave my meditation or my quiet space and I go into life and I start to experience, I've already got kind of an idea of how I want to approach every situation. Do you yourself have like a mantra or I don't know, a sentence that is an overarching kind of philosophy for you in terms of how you approach life?
I think the thing that has been important for me for a long time and becomes more important, right, as I mother children who are growing up and developing their own personalities and having their own ideas, is before you do anything, tell the truth, right? Like, tell the truth about what's actually going on. Tell the truth to yourself. Tell the truth to the person that you're with. And that idea will inform your reaction to so many things, right? Like, if I can pause for just a moment, right, before I yell at my kids or before I proclaim some edict about what works for our family, I might be fucking hungry. Right? Like,
Yeah,
there
yeah,
might be something going
yeah,
on
totally.
that's not like a big life shifting moment that I need to like make a proclamation. If I can take a half a breath and say what's actually going on right now, that pause can influence the next 10 things that happen, right? Because you can eat a banana and be all right, right? And if the answer to that question, what's really going on, is that something is seismically wrong, that's okay, right? That's information. And that will affect the next 10 things you do. But being incredibly honest with yourself about yourself before whatever happens has been important, right? For me as a person and for me as a wife and for me as a mom and for me as a friend. Because in the end, that moment of pause you take for yourself makes you so much more available to the person that you're relating to, because they're getting a realistic picture, right, of the person who's there to care for them or to answer them or to be present to them because of that moment in time.
I love that you've shared that, and I think that's a really good place to end because you are one of the most honest, truthful, unapologetically yourself people I've ever met, and that just kind of inspires me to kind of be true to myself. And I know our collective human experience, sometimes that's really hard to be honest when we're kind of having that conversation with ourselves. But as you mentioned, it's so significant because if we're able to be honest with ourselves in that moment in time, that honesty is going to really influence our entire experience. I can't thank you enough for being
Thank
a
you.
part of Shift and being one of our master teachers. I know that throughout this program, you are going to continue to add value in a way that only you can. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Thank you for walking with us along this journey that we all call life. Peace and love, everyone. Take care.